Oh, thank you. Uh, Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Woodward Tigers here at woodwardsports.com. I'm Roy Helix alongside Miss Chris Brown, Uper, and John. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or you listen to the podcast. And tonight, James Fox of Future Sox will be joining us in about a half hour. That's why we're starting late. He's over in Central Time, and we're gonna be talking. We were talking so much about the White Sox last week; it just got me thinking. Might as well bring on a White Sox prospect guy and who knows the team inside and out, and is also not afraid to say some things about the ownership. So we'll get to that. First things first, there's the World Baseball. I mean, well, tonight the big news, obviously, Jackson Jobe is going to pretty much miss a good majority of the season, and there's some news about Dillon Dingler as well. So we'll get to that. The Tigers losing tonight. They just lost about 20 minutes ago or so. Lost 10-1 to Philly. 1 run on 5 hits. 1 run on 5 hits. That's it. And
lots of home runs for Philly.
Yep, they got 4 home runs and a grand slam given up by Garrett Hill.
Garrett Hill was going to be my good tonight because his first inning was great and his spring had been great, and then his second inning was a disaster. So
yeah,
it's a good lesson for me.
Yeah, there's that was one of those things too where I was looking at the rest because the game was on 1270 and it was on the AM feed, so there was no TV feed, which I was kind of surprised actually because Philly seems to always show the TV side of things, but nevertheless, Tigers fall and they get a couple scoreless innings actually, and that was what I wanted to mention too because two guys were fighting for a bullpen spot, Trey Wingeater and Chase Shreve. Both had good outings. Wingeater had an inning and struck out 2. Shreve 1 hit, 1 run, or excuse me, 1 inning, 1 hit, and a strikeout. And Chase Fry, who's been pitching better as of late, also just had a walk, a strikeout, and just allowing 1 hit. But the offense-wise was just, I mean, Nick Maton had 2 of the 5 hits. That was it. It was just the rest was just hit by a Baddoo, and I think Donnie Sands also got in the action too. But it was bad offensive output this evening.
Only 4 hard hit balls. That is to say, balls hit harder than 95 miles per hour, which is generally what you want to do. So, I mean, they were facing Zach Wheeler, which doesn't help. But a bunch of no-name Phillies relievers kind of shut them down too. So, not great. But spring training can't win them all.
Yeah, exactly. And it's again the stats don't matter to a certain extent. Stats do not matter, but there's always that kind of how it depends on how you want to fit your narrative with that. But so one thing so last night the World Baseball Classic, Dominican Republic was kind of expected to go far in this tournament, and they didn't. Puerto Rico came out pretty quickly early on in the game, and they beat the Dominican Republic to advance past second round. And in the celebration, Edwin Diaz tore his right patellar tendon while celebrating. And this is a guy who just signed a 5-year, $102 million deal in the offseason. But you saw him getting put on a wheelchair. So there's going to be a couple options for the Mets. But there was a weirdly weird reaction on social media about that they should get rid of the World Baseball Classic, considering that spring training injuries happen often. But I think it's always I feel like it's kind of maybe a New York state of mind kind of thing. I don't know, but I think the World Baseball Classic to some of these countries means a lot. You can hear it in the crowd. You can hear all this, but just, I don't know if you guys' experience on Twitter today was any different, but the injuries happen all the time. This was a freak thing, but are you going to sit there and get mad about the World Baseball Classic?
Gavin Lux blew his ACL out the other day in a meaningless game as well. You're just going to get rid of all spring training games then? I mean, people get hurt crossing the street. It's silly.
Yeah, but Kyle Funkhauser famously got hurt stumbling on the sidewalk in Toledo. Yeah, I mean, this was the Edwin Diaz takes were my bad today because, it was just so over the top.
Yeah.
And you had a couple really loud, like, national people that were kind of leading it. But, like, to your point, Raj, like, yes, these games, first of all, you just have to erase the narrative that these games don't mean anything. They don't mean anything to you as a Mets fan, maybe, but these are hugely important to Puerto Rican people,
Yeah.
Dominican people, and Venezuelan people, and you could tell by the attendance and by
The
the
fervor.
players. If the players didn't care, they wouldn't go. But it obviously means a lot to them, and so as I get that we'll probably see some pushback from teams in the future where they just don't want to risk it. But to You's point, like, all right, well, what games do matter? The spring training doesn't matter. The regular season doesn't matter. Why don't you we'll just pick 8 teams and have a tournament every year, and that'll be it. Because it's these games matter to people, and it reminded me of what's his name, the dude Ken Morrow. Do you guys know who Ken Morrow is?
Hockey player?
Yeah, hockey player.
Yeah.
From Davidson / Flint. Was
Team
on
USA, 1980.
Was on the Team USA 1980 Miracle on Ice team. Won 4 Stanley Cups with the juggernaut Islanders teams of the early 80s. So people always ask him, like, hey, what matters more to you? And he can't ever give anybody an answer because they both mean that much to him. And it's like, I'm sure Edwin Diaz would love to win a World Series, but I bet closing that game to get Puerto Rico over Dominican Republic and move on is probably one of the highlights of his career so far.
Kenny Morrow, one of the best beards in sports history, with no helmet. So you really saw the whole beard. Very impressive.
But yeah, I mean, these games obviously mean something to these players, and so to dismiss it as meaningless is just kind of that sort of, I don't know, ethnocentrism or whatever, like just worried about my team and not realizing that other people have concerns about their team too, and national concerns.
The other thing too is, in terms of Edwin Diaz specifically and the Mets, I mean, the $20 million he makes per year is a rounding error for Steve Cohen. Okay, he misses $20 million like you or I, miss the $6 for a latte. I mean, big deal. I mean, they lost a guy. It's a shame. They could have lost him in any number of ways. They're going to have to go get a closer. Well, guess what? He's shown he's probably going to go invest in a closer if they need one. I don't think they're going to be left hurting. They're not going to go into October a closer short if Steve Cohen has anything to say about it.
Yeah, they've got some good prospects to trade. They still have David Robertson, I think, who's got plenty of experience closing. So, yeah, but to your point, the money doesn't matter at all. They have insurance. They'll get the money back or whatever. It's more about losing, the best reliever in baseball. But, like you said, that could have happened in the first game of the season. Could have happened next week in spring training. I mean, obviously, it looks worse when it's a celebration.
Yeah.
It makes, it brings to mind one of the, I don't remember which Gramatica brother it was, the kicker. I don't know if it was Martin or Bill, but
I think it was Martin.
Who celebrating a field goal and blew out his knee, or Kendrys Morales was a really bad one. You remember that?
He stepped at home plate, right?
Walk-off grand slam in May, and they're celebrating. Broke his leg / ankle, missed all of that year and all of the next year. It just freak things happen. But got to get angry about something, I guess.
Yeah, that's it. Go ahead, John.
Oh, I was just going to ask, do you guys think this drastically changes your predictions in the NL East? Do you think, were you looking at the Mets as the favorite, and now are you kind of looking at them? Because arguably he's the best closer in baseball. That should be a pretty significant loss for them.
Well, not even doing a deep dive on a shallow, like just not even. I didn't have the Mets winning the division. I didn't. I thought the Braves would probably come back and win a division. I think the NL East is gonna be a little tighter than that. But Philly too looked really good too. Philly had a really good offseason as well. It wasn't. I mean, I know the Mets spent a lot of money, but I just think that they would get off to a good start. But I don't know. Without doing a deeper dive like I have, like I've been so focused on the Tigers recently that I haven't had a chance to really get into our other divisions. But on the surface, yeah, it does hurt them. But who knows? They could make a trade tomorrow and address it. They could get Michael Fulmer from the Cubs. They could do a number of things. But excuse me, the Mets. I think the Mets will be okay. I think they will.
If you downgrade from the best closer in baseball to a league average closer in baseball, how many wins are we talking over the course of a year? 3?
Yeah.
2? Yeah.
I mean, they can go trade for David Bednar
Yeah.
and be just fine.
Yeah, that's what I think too.
Yeah, there's already some fan base that are going to say, hey, trade for our, guy we don't like or whatever. There's going to be that already. And it's, again, there's national pride. Even like what, and Ray mentioned this in the chat, that Diaz got to play with his brother for the first time. That means something to some people. And so it's just, you tell me when you go see a game in Japan, especially the crowd. I love the crowds during the WBC. That is my favorite part because go ahead, Chris.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I was going to say something. I think sometimes, I don't know, where do we get this unwritten rule that we have to be polite? Like, it's ridiculous. Like, I think there's sometimes, like, you go to another country and you see how a soccer match is and how loud they get, how passionate they get, and there's chants, there's horns and all this stuff. Baseball is so weird in a sense that here it's almost like it's too quiet sometimes. And yeah, they do get cheery during certain moments. Maybe it's just Tigers games because no one goes to the games, but I mean, not to be a dick about it, but I don't see the same kind of energy at all. I don't see the same kind of energy at games here.
A friend of mine lived in Korea for a while, and he went to KBO games, and he said the atmosphere was so electric just for a mundane Tuesday night game. Everybody's doing the chants. Every player's got his own little song. All the fans know the words to the song. And they're hitting they're shaking their rattles and everything else. And he said it's almost sensory overload. You're a little bit exhausted when you're done. When's the last time we felt exhausted after a Tiger game?
No, I mean, it's you get that in America for very special like event games or playoff games. I remember I went to Game 4 of the 2012 ALCS when the Tigers finished their sweep of the Yankees, and that was electric from start to finish. It was an awesome atmosphere. But also last year, Raj took me to one of the games where Miggy was trying to break, get his 3,000th hit. And I mean, that was just an outstanding, a packed house, everybody hanging on every pitch to Miggy, like everybody was just buzzing. You could feel it. And yeah, it's kind of remarkable to see that for every game in these tournaments for these other teams. I'm jealous because I think that would be a pretty awesome experience to feel that every time you go to a game. Although it might be too much after a while. You're like, oh, geez, settle down, guys. I got to get some nachos.
Yeah. Do you think it's just because it's so like it's only a couple games, like a handful of games a year? That's probably why. Like just because it's not every day, like Major League Baseball.
Again, over in Asia, those games they play 4 games a week. And they have that energy. I just think it's ingrained in their culture. It's what they've always done. Where in the United States, at a ball game, it's like you're sitting in church. That's the way it's always been done.
Yeah, it's more like I think football games here, where everybody's just super pumped up the entire time, except unless there's a blowout. But I mean, that's it. The overriding point is that people care about these games. They're fun to watch. There's so many cool stories that come out of these. I don't know if we planned on talking about the kid the Tigers signed.
Yes.
But what an awesome story.
Yeah.
And even if that's the end of it for that kid, you go out and pitch the inning of your life against multiple pitchers or players who might go to the Hall of Fame, and you go and strike them out, and then you get signed to a deal immediately after. That's like a Disney movie, right?
Yeah, it's something you don't see. Yeah, it's something you don't see very often. And the fact that he went out there, and so I'm trying to pull up the gentleman's name because I'm totally at a loss.
It's like Duke Hebert or Herbert. I don't know how it's but
I'm just calling him Duke.
The Duke.
No,
just call him
the Duke.
Yeah,
he's the Duke.
Duke Hebert.
Yeah,
I was going to call him Herbert.
Herbert? No, the Duke sounds much cooler.
Yeah.
So he has some more. It's got some more authority to it. The Duke. No, he went out there and he struck out. Yeah, 3 of the best batters in the world. I know it was the 9th inning, but he was 21 and he's 21 years old. And I ended up watching an interview with him in Spanish, and he was saying he likes to attack the zone and shows no fear. It was a little more than just your typical Duke Hebert. Duke Hebert.
Yeah.
I don't know why I got Hebert from. Maybe because I was thinking of Roy. Never mind. Anyway. Bobby Hebert, the former Michigan Panthers quarterback. Yeah. So, other WBC news a little bit before we get to a couple of things. The Japan beats Italy and they advance. And like I mentioned earlier, Dominican Republic losing Mexico and Puerto Rico tomorrow night, or excuse me, on Friday night, if you're listening, in the quarterfinals. And then on Saturday, Venezuela against the United States at 7. And if it wasn't for Mike Trout, I think the U.S. would have been out of this tournament. And they proved that yesterday because he drove in all the runs.
Yeah, I think there was a way for them to still get in, even if they lost by 1 run. But yeah, that was not. That was a tight game against Colombia. You don't expect Colombia to put up that much of a fight, but that's one of the things we learned from this tournament is these teams. It's not quite like anybody can win any game like an NCAA tournament or whatever, but it's getting closer now. You see Great Britain put up a fight, and you see Colombia put up a fight. I mean, basically everybody but China had a couple decent games. China,
they're relatively new to it. Yeah,
but I think Cuba fought their way back and made the tournament. Right? They were down.
Yeah, that was a really good
first
game.
2 games or first.
They lost the first. I think it was the first 2 games, and then they had a hell of a game against Australia. It was the second time they played Australia in. I think it was in the second round like this, and that was a nail biter. And the bullpen once again held it together for Cuba's been getting some really good pitching, so that's been helping them out. And so they advance. They will play the winner of the. I think I'm trying to remember how the draw works without researching it, but they will be playing on Sunday. So. But no, and so getting back into terms of what's going on around the league and around the Tigers. So the big news of the day is one that there's some fans out there who are actually rather doing the "I told you so" dance, which I think is again ridiculous. But Jackson Jobe will be missing 3 to 6 months with a back injury. Is his back, and it's not good. And then on the same token, Dillon Dingler, also in the injury update today, came up. He's going to have surgery on his right knee. I think it's a torn.
A meniscectomy or whatever. He had basically they clear up an already torn meniscus. I don't know if they cut the whole thing out or just cut out the torn part, but but that's a relatively minor knee procedure, fortunately.
Yeah.
Although if you're a catcher, I don't really want to hear anything about your knees. But yeah, it's not as unfortunate as the Jobe news.
Yeah.
And Sean makes a good point. I like the way Sean said it. It's not "I told you so," it's a "history told you so." Yes, you're absolutely right. And from what we know, and we were talking about this today in one of our chats, it was essentially they agreed to the deal with Meyer beforehand, but number one on their board was Meyer. Or excuse me, Jobe. They agreed to the deal with Jobe because they didn't think Meyer would be there.
Yeah,
is that correct, Chris?
That's what I mean. That's the story that's been going around that they honored their deal with Jobe.
That was even out there on draft night.
Yeah,
I recall.
Yeah, I think that the Fangraphs guys were reporting that back then. But I mean, the strange thing about that, and there's some bit of that that's admirable. But from talking in the minor league side, talking to these players about their draft experience, they get promised things by teams like every round. Like, yeah, if you're there next round, we'll take you. And then the next pick goes around and they go, sorry. And I understand you don't want to burn bridges, and maybe it's different when it's like a top 5 pick. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe that you just go, well, he's our favorite player, but no, we'll take this guy instead. I think they still really like Jobe a lot. I bet you it was more like a 1A and 1B to them. And I mean, everybody said at the beginning, like this is it's well known within the industry that high school pitching is very risky because there are only so many bullets in every arm, and you have a long development path to get to the big leagues. Even Andrew Painter murdered their minor leagues last year. Just crushed his way all the way up to AA. Looked like he was going to be a stud. Hurt his elbow. It happens to just about every pitching prospect. So that's why you don't do it. But they bucked the trend back then. They thought maybe they could get a front of the rotation starter, and now, I mean, the real question is will Jobe even pitch this year? I mean, 3 months would put him back in July or so, I think. Yep. But if it's on the back end of that timetable, he's not going to pitch this season. And that's the worst possible outcome for him because he's a guy who needs as many innings as possible.
Yeah, and for the fans that are like upset about it, like even if you didn't want to draft Jobe, at the end of the day, the administration that drafted him isn't here anymore. So what's the point in really complaining about it? He's on our team. We have to make what's best for him. He still has incredible upside as a pitcher. And I don't understand. Like, we're acting like his career's over. Like, people are making it sound that way. Like he might be back by the end of the season. What is he, 21 years old at this point?
He'll be turning 21. I think he turns 21 this year.
Yeah.
In June. Yeah.
Like, I don't understand. Sure, you could be upset not drafting Meyer, but at the end of the day, that was a different GM, and there's not much we can do about it anymore.
But you know what? I will say this. I will say I understand why the fans are frustrated, because it just seemed like a bumbling thing that happened. The whole entire thing just seemed like it was a fumble, and that's where I think fans should be mad. Now, for everybody that said they knew they were going to draft Meyer, I don't recall so many draft experts among Tigers Twitter or Facebook, but that's where part of the cracks me up, because all you got to do is go, well, look where he is. Look where he is on a prospect list. That's why he's better. Well, that's fine. And I'm not gonna lie. I was showing Chris the footage from the draft night show where we were going, what just happened? And I was swearing in Spanish. I mean, there's a part where I'm just like swearing, and Chris goes, oh, well, Roger's got to go in the pool now.
Yeah, I mean, we had been told that they were going to go with Meyer, and then suddenly it was like, oh, wait, no, they're going with Jobe. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, we've seen this before in Detroit sports. There was the Darko pick instead of Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh and whomever else. At the time, people understood it like, oh, look at the upside of this guy, but in retrospect, maybe not, taking the foreign guy who only played against the chair. But then it's like, the Lions took Terry Fair ahead of Randy Moss because of, they couldn't have a bad personality on the team. And it's like, that didn't work out well. But it's still way too early for any of that, right? Like, Marcelo Meyer hasn't done anything in the big leagues yet. Jackson Jobe was going to spend all year in the minors anyway. So the worst case scenario, I guess the worst case scenario is this is a horrible injury and he never comes back. But we'll treat this like a normal scenario where he rehabs and comes back from the injury, and maybe he misses a year. He's still in the big leagues by the time he's like 23, 24.
Do we take heart that it's his back and not a shoulder or something?
I'm glad it's not a shoulder, but in the hierarchy of injuries, I would prefer probably an elbow before a back. And we talk about this all the time, and maybe it's different with a low back injury, but back trouble just doesn't ever seem to go away. You can manage it, and then it'll pop up, and you're missing 10 games here, 10 games there. Hopefully it's not an issue like that, but it always kind of bums me out.
Such a young guy for back problems.
I mean, there's one thing I was going over earlier today is like, I don't ever remember hearing anything about lumbar spine injuries.
Yeah.
I think they used to just call them low back injuries or back injuries, but the Tigers in the past year have had these from Kerry Carpenter, Joe Jimenez, Jackson Jobe. I think maybe even Casey Mize. Casey Mize had the back surgery too. So I don't know.
Winslow Perez.
I don't know if they've got guys like carrying pianos around or what's going on, but yeah, something needs to change there. It's a strange epidemic of a certain type of injury.
Yeah, and this is not like saying that Jobe is going to be bad or anything, but I just think when you have a top pick like that, as valuable as those top picks are, I think you just prefer to spend it on a guy that's going to be in your lineup every day. And that's where I can understand why people were upset with that. Because at the end of the day, Marcel Meyer, he's going to be in the Red Sox lineup every single day, and Jobe is going to be pitching once every fifth day. I think Jobe still, could be a really good pitcher, but I think it's just more valuable to have a guy playing every single day.
Yeah, and there are teams who certainly agree with that, right? I mean, this year's draft will be kind of an interesting scenario too. They've got two really good hitters and two very interesting pitchers.
Yeah, and that draft that Jobe was in terms of shortstops or infield talent seems to be perking up pretty nicely. So that's where I think another reason why fans are frustrated.
I always say take the best available player, right? And can you make a definite case that Jackson Jobe was better than any of those other guys? I just don't think that case was truly there to be made. Maybe they were, as Chris said, 1A, 1B, and they're very, very close. But then if they're that close, then I would obviously lean toward the hitter. I think we all wanted Meyer that day. I know I did in the weeks leading up to that draft. It was a huge disappointment. But you know when Johnny there says that everybody's gone, well, one person's not gone. Chris Ilitch isn't gone, and that's his organization. And I'm not saying he's day to day in the draft prep. Okay, no one is saying that, but it just shows he kept that that regime in place so long. That's why even last year, it's amazing to me that Al Avila had any possible hand in that draft, and he was going to get fired a month later. It's mind bending.
Yeah, I remember listening to Cody Stavenhagen's podcast where they basically suggested that most of the draft team wanted to take Zach Neto, but Al Avila, David Chad overruled them and took Chase Young. So it's like, oof. And then they're gone. Yeah, it's tough. But
that's a Chris Ilitch thing.
sometimes general managers get the smartest guy in the room syndrome, right? Where they're like, we see something in this guy, we think he's the exception, and yeah. But to John's point, like, as much as we want to complain about, those guys are gone. They're gone for a reason. Maybe this is part of the reason. So you just hope for the best for Jackson Jobe. Like that's the one thing is you hear all these people complaining, and it basically is like poor Jackson Jobe is like, hey guys, I exist. I'm not.
I'm a human being.
Marcelo Meyer a couple times.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see what happens. We're
I do agree with Jed. You want something impactful there, and I can't dispute that. But it worked. But then again, as I said, I've always been curious if there was somebody was talking about this in chat today. That would the Tigers sign a pitcher in Flores? Of course they would have. But and the Zach Neto thing does bother me because he had a really good Cape Cod league. His wood and bat numbers were really good, and he wasn't. I mean, he played, and I think that the knock up against him is that he played in some no-name school. Who cares?
Campbell. Yeah,
Campbell. I mean, I can understand if it's like an elevation issue, like Nick Gonzalez at New Mexico State. Okay, you can say the elevation has a factor in it. Of course it does, but. I just think that one of the things that really struck out to me about Neto is as soon as he got to the Angels, he wrecked shop. And look, I understand the Angels system is not that deep. This is the same team that did all pitchers 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So again, but at the same time, it is kind of frustrating when you know full well that there's some of the decision making, especially when you start picking up there's a big division between the old school and the new school. And like I said, talking to some people last year, it was just like, hey, we have to present this. And they basically like, whatever. We don't care. What do you know? You're not a scout. You're in the analytics department. And that's how it was kind of, at least in my opinion, that's what I got the impression of.
Did you even play the game?
Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah.
We see over and over and over and over again, these scouts work hard, they do their best, but nobody knows for sure, right? Like the best player from the 2020 draft right now, the Tigers had the top overall pick, Spencer Torkelson. Best player from that draft, 4th round pitcher, Spencer Strider, who a lot of people thought was a reliever. Yeah. And gets in the pro ball and completely changes his pitch mix and the pitch mix, and suddenly, he looks like a potential ace. It's like, you never know. You have no idea. You can do your best to prepare, but it's nobody can see the future.
Well, that's usually how it goes with pitching. Like I said, DeGrom was a 9th round pick. Shane Bieber was a 4th round pick. It's more about how you develop these guys in terms of, some pitchers like Justin Verlander, wherever he was drafted, he was probably going to turn out as good as he was. But for a lot of these pitchers, it really just comes to how they're developed. You remember Garrett Cole in Pittsburgh really couldn't reach his ceiling, was traded to Houston and became one of the best pitchers in baseball. I think it's more about the development of these pitchers as opposed to where they're drafted.
Well, if you
a bit of spider tech,
I was gonna say if you're drafted by the Pittsburgh Pirates and you're good, you'll be better elsewhere. That's the Pirates motto. It really is. Pirates pitching. You're not gonna be here very long. Enjoy it. So that's just the way I look at it as far as Pittsburgh goes. So as we wait for, hopefully Jeff did not forget that he was on this evening. Let's start with what's up.
Well, we did. We talked a lot about Jobe. We did touch on Dingler, which is a bummer. But I think they said 4 weeks for that, so he'll probably be back in May. I was kind of curious why we hadn't been seeing him in spring much. We've seen Josh Crouch a couple times lately, but and And then there was Quincy Naporti, who might not mean much to Tigers fans, but he was the MVP of the Eastern League last year. He was a huge part of Erie's team, and he's not a big league prospect. I mean, you never know with guys like that, like the Frank Schwindells of the world. He might pop up one day and hit 15 home runs in the bigs or something. But he was going to probably be Toledo's starting first baseman this year, and he had Tommy John surgery, which is not a big deal for position players, but you're still out 6 months at least, and he just had it, so he's probably out for the year, which is obviously a bummer for him. He's a guy who was signed out of indie ball, and it was a good story.
Yep.
And who knows what's going to happen with his future. And then the other, I don't know. What struck me is it seems like this time of year it's usually a rash of injuries in the big league club. Like, it's really bad news. And then today it was just like, here's a bunch of awful minor league news. Like, man.
Yeah, especially it's just like it's a bunch of just nagging injuries, and I feel sorry for when we talked to Winfield Perez, they're literally on them working on him all the time, and so it's just Ray with the comment of the night in YouTube chat. Maybe that's why MLB is trying to create a Tigers Pirates rivalry. Two of the worst franchises at player development. Well said, Ray.
Yeah.
Well said. That's good.
Are there any teams worse than that? I'm trying to think who.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you define it, what era. Like, up until recently, the Phillies had a pretty awful track record for about 15 years of developing anybody. And they had their first-round picks were brutal. There was, what was that? There was third baseman.
Moniak.
Yeah. Moniak was like the fourth of a terrible stretch of first-round picks. So they were bad. The White Sox have been pretty bad. They have this tendency to get one random guy and push him really quickly, and he ends up okay. But beyond that, they hadn't done very much of anything. I mean, some of the Yankees weren't even all that great, but they've hit on Aaron Judge, which kind of makes up for everything. So there are some organizations that have stretches where they're not very good for a long time, but then there's other teams like seemingly the Rays and the Cardinals and the Dodgers who never go long without having a really nice draft haul.
And speaking of the Cardinals, one of the things that I found amazingly fascinating was the fact that they let this guy go here, Freddie Pacheco, who had some pretty good numbers. I was looking through the log and looking at some of his outings where he does seem to go a little longer, but he's got some good stuff. He's got electric stuff, got a really good slider, a good fastball, and at one point he was among the top 10 Cardinal prospects, and they let him go. And I'm just a little I was wondering, did he do something in the clubhouse? Did he assault somebody? Am I missing something? And it's just because. But then, as Chris, I think you reminded us, the Cardinals do this all the time. The Cardinals let go of players and have no rhyme or reason why. They just say, well, we're the Cardinal way, and this is how it's going to be. And I don't know. It just seemed really strange to me that they did that. And I'm trying to find. I put together a clip of all his some of his relief appearances. I cannot talk this evening, and I wanted to show everybody who hasn't watched me yet. I don't want to get too far off track from our segments because it is getting a little late. But this is him against Gwinnett, ironically enough, against Justin Henry Malloy. And you can tell in terms of his stuff, here's where that's right there's fastball. But he tends to open up a little bit sometimes after a while, but I don't know. I like this arm a lot. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, it's a very good arm. It's it's a relief arm. So there's some wildness, there's some inconsistency with the delivery or whatever, but you take a bet on the arm, the guy with 2+ pitches or plus pitches and see if you can straighten out the mechanics a little bit, because if you do, you got yourself like a setup man or a closer. So I thought it was a really nice ad.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys saw in a Free Press article. It said that he had a right elbow injury. Did you guys ever see that?
Yeah,
I don't know.
And I saw Eddie Bajak posted something on Twitter about he thinks that's why the Cardinals let him go, because there's like a small window to release guys or do something with guys before you have to put them on the injured list. There's some kind of obscure rule that the Tigers took advantage of there. I don't know exactly. I didn't really follow it too closely, but yeah, I mean, it could very well be that the Cardinals don't like what they see there and don't are worried about something down the line. But yeah, like to Roger's point, like they're not afraid to cut loose talent if they don't fit their culture there. And that's just speculation here, but like you look at Adolis Garcia, who's got 60 home runs and 40 steals over the last 2 seasons, and they just let him go. He's just like a 6-WAR player over the last 2 years. So, not saying that Freddie Pacheco is going to be the next closer for the Tigers, but it's worth a shot, right? The Cardinals tend to have a lot of talent.
Those are the kind of moves you just have to make. That has to become a routine. And I go back, I keep saying the same thing, but if he's even 1% better, 2% better than your 40th guy, that's how you build the bottom half of the roster and get incrementally better. So, and maybe you hit big on one of those guys. So he throws hard enough. Good things could happen.
I do like the comment that they had to leave room for Drew Verhagen. Yes. And yeah, effectively, WOW would be a good way to put it. And this is an example here in AA against one of the worst team name jerseys out there, the Wichita Falls Surge. I'm sorry, it's such a dumb setup. Anyway, so he looks a lot sharper here. This is I think I recorded this is for June or July. I can't remember exactly, but I thought he looked a lot more consistent. Wasn't too wild. Was able to set up his fastball better. But I like this move a lot for the Tigers, and it just shows that they're not any stone's going to be unturned, and they're not and up to figure out a rule like that. I mean, would you really think that the old regime would be able to figure that out? We're not going to do this every time, but just that was news to me. I didn't know that.
I put out a tweet the other day. This is similar to signing the kid from Columbia, Duke Hebert there. They were I give Scott Harris, they were very nimble to make that move on the spot and beat other teams to him. Now, maybe they were just lucky and had a scout there who could do it. But that's to their credit. They had a guy there, and they made a quick decision, and they got him signed. Now, does he ever do anything? Who the hell knows? But I'd rather see them be aggressive and be Johnny on the spot than be, 2 steps behind.
Yeah, that's really as simple as that. I don't think there's too much for the Tigers just to be aggressive and try things. Just try things, then to see what happens from there. So that's assuming that James is not going to be here because I'm not. Yeah, which I'm not. Just whatever.
We can still talk about the White Sox.
Yeah, we'll talk about the White Sox another day, but I'm not going to. The Tigers have made a lot. There's a lot of actually good MLB talk this evening, so But now it's time because we're running a little late, but we're going to run. Now it's time for our inside numbers. And Stan is wondering when the Tiger focus of the 10-8 podcast will be. I think we've got the Tigers pretty well covered this evening, but that would probably be our inside number segment. And John, I'll let you kick it off tonight. What is your inside the number?
So my inside the number was 835. That's Tigers OPS. This spring, obviously they've had a pretty good spring offensively, and then I kind of put 2 into 1 here, but 71. That is the number of walks they've drawn this spring, which is 14th in baseball. I know that was definitely a point of improvement. They were looking to make this year, and second in home runs with 33. So just kind of some numbers on the Tigers offense and how they fare. I think the walk one is the most interesting because I think that's going to be a big talking point for improvement this year. And right now, 14th in baseball with 71 walks.
I like that number. All right. Chris, what is your inside the number?
So mine are 9 and 7.4. And we've kind of gone over this before, but the 9 is how many balls Spencer Torkelson has hit at least 105 miles per hour this spring, including the 109.9 today. And the 7.4 is the percentage of pitches he's seen that he has hit at 105 or more. Last year, Torque hit 31 balls total in the regular season that hard for a percentage of 1.9 in the highest rate of balls hit that hard last year was Vlad Guerrero at 5.3%. So torque is 2% higher than that so far this spring, and it's just spring. And we learned our lesson last week about Brad Kamensk. You don't put too much into spring training stats, but so far torque is doing about 95% of what we want him to do. Right? He's doing about all he can. The ball isn't landing and it's not going over the fence, and we still want to see that. But boy, he's hitting the tar out of the ball. And that's a lot better than missing those fastballs that he was missing last year. And our buddy Brandon Day wrote a really great article over at Bless You Boys about that. And so it's encouraging. I know people get kind of tired of hearing this, exit velocity when there's not home runs on the board, but nobody's ever hit the ball that hard, that consistently, and not eventually done well. At least with a reasonable launch angle, and torque isn't some guy hitting ground balls all the time. So you just hope that they start going over the fence, and you hope that he can adjust once the big league pitchers adjust to him.
Yeah, I think he's getting there. Like I wrote him off a little early, not wrote him off admittedly. I just thought that early on he was still missing a lot. So it's good to see him catch up.
How much easier do you think he's breathing right now? Just a little, right?
A hell of a lot, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, he went fishing yesterday. He went fishing with the Meadow Brothers. And Riley Green, I think they invited I forgot there's a reliever that went there too. Matt
Out on the ocean?
Yeah, they went fishing yesterday on their day off because the Tigers were off yesterday.
Was it on the ocean? Or was it
they're surrounded by a body of water anywhere you go in Florida, so I'm not really sure. Maybe it was a lake, actually, now that I think about it, because there is several lakes in Lakeland that I've discovered. They're really nice. Lakeland is a beautiful city. I really want to go back. But I
know it's silly to think about, but I always think about those 3 guys for the Indians who died in a boating wreck in spring training.
Oh,
yeah, Are you talking about the
Babelheda?
Yeah, Babelheda.
Brutal.
Whistler. Thank you. Yes, Stan. It was the reliever that they signed from the Rays. So, Uper, what is your inside number?
My number is going back to the WBC, 64 million. That is the number of viewers for the Japan-Korea game.
Wow.
Okay? Much better than World Series numbers, for instance. Just shows you the fervor for baseball around the world, especially in countries where it's already part of the culture. More reason why the event makes sense to have. And sure, can they do things better? Would there be some other times of the year that might be better? Maybe. But right now, I think what they have going is pretty good. And I think it's getting a little bit stronger every time. And anytime you can put 64 million eyeballs on your sport, even if it's 2 non-American teams, that is good for baseball. And they're doing the right thing by having this.
Yeah, like I said, even just like the Cuba and Australia game too. Both audience, there was a really good crowd for that too as well. It was, the Japanese rooted on Cuba and Australia similarly, so it was pretty cool to see that they had some of the Japanese folks had like these yellow wigs and then the Nippon Dragons have several. So that was good to see that. So my inside number, looking at the total, just look at the relievers in general. The last trade because looking at our projections are very similar, but I was looking at swinging strike stuff. So swinging strike stuff, but swinging strike stats, and I thought that just kind of take a look at what we're dealing with here among attacking the zone and being aggressive. One man has been attacking the zone pretty well. So when they classify swinging strike, swinging strikes, they mean by foul tip, swing strike, or a swing strike that's been blocked. And among the leaders, number 1 is Chasen Shreve at 34.6%. Sliders generating quite a bit of swings and misses. He's doing well with changeup. So of his 52 pitches thrown, and that's not including today, but still that's a pretty high percentage. And right up there too, and 60 pitches is Alex Faedo at 26.7%. That was another number stand up. But among starters, it's Matthew Boyd at 19.5%. So,
yeah, what's interesting about that is that those are the numbers on the total number of pitches. Normally, when you like anything over 10%, there is good because when you see the whiff rates, those are just on swings. And so those are usually like you want something over 30%, but over 10% on pitches is pretty strong. So that's once you get over 20, you're talking you're cooking with gas, as they say, and possibly breaking balls too.
Yeah, and you know what's funny, Chris? In just a short period of time, the gentleman you posted on my report, the guy they sent from Florida,
Zabala?
Yeah, Zabala. In 20 pitches, 4 of his pitches, he had a 20% strikeout. Strikes.
That was a loud outing. The command was not there, but yeah, he was sitting 98 to 100, and that was pretty impressive. So that's another power arm there that I don't know. It seems like they're just kind of trying to hide him. He hasn't pitched much in spring, but I don't know. I mean, there's probably a reason Miami let him go. He probably doesn't throw any strikes, or at least consistently enough. But they seem to be really, with Pacheco, with him, with some other guys, they're really beefing up the velocity at the back end of their bullpen, or at least the velocity potential.
Yeah, Toledo's going to have a stock bullpen. I mean, between Toledo and Erie, it's going to be nice. And I will, by the way, real quick before we get into our the good, the bad, the ugly this evening. Yes, Perry, I wish there was a pitch clock during the World Baseball Classic, and that's been actually. Now that I think about it, like when I'm so used to pitch clock now between the minors and then watching the games, that some of these games have been taking forever. Like especially the amount of times between Australia and Cuba. Like, stop it! Let's go. I want to go to work. Watch it early in the morning. Good Lord. Bad. But yeah, I don't like, and even the shift. Seeing the shift back there was a little weird too, with the seeing how they were aligning the shift. But I'm not gonna miss the shift. That's for sure. I think it's gonna be better for baseball. All right, now it is time for the good, the bad, the ugly. By the way, the Inside the Numbers segment is an original segment. Let's just say that. I mean, by the way, before we get to this real quick, I want to give props to Mark Urash and Petzold. They have their own podcast over at the Freep. And when I saw they had an Inside the Numbers segment, I'm like, Mark, you've been on the show enough to know. Props to you. Props to you. So I want to give a shout out to those guys. As the podcast community in Detroit, I thoroughly enjoy it. Like I said, I talk to Bentley every almost like once or twice a week about random baseball stuff. So it's pretty cool.
Why don't you can sell them that name and we'll call ours Numbers Don't Lie.
Jed, by the way, says Great Britain and Canada took years off my life. So yeah, Perry. Usually we normally start the show at 9 o'clock. We start at 9:30 to accommodate guests. The guest meals.
It's incredible.
Was that Chris? Broke up there.
Yeah, the music is incredibly loud to me. Like I couldn't hear anybody talk.
Yeah.
All right, that's weird. All right. Then I'll just turn off the music. Yeah.
No, it was so good.
It's weird. It drowned you out though. It never. When John was talking and normal level was fine. Yeah, I don't know what's going on tonight.
Maybe it could just be for my headphones and my microphone or something.
No, I think it
got loud.
There's been a lag this evening. It's been there's been a broadband lag on my end. So,
I felt like I was about to get shot by Clint Eastwood.
All right, so I'll start with you, Uper. What is your good, the bad, the ugly this week?
My good, first good. I got a little two-parter here. My good, who is non-baseball. My daughter's taking this personality quiz, right? And I'm on the phone with her just now. She's in St. Louis. And one of the questions she asked me, and I'm honest, I came up with this on the spot. And it says, "What is your favorite shape?" Okay. So I told her, Oda. Oda shape.
Oh man, come on.
That was good, man.
She laughed for a long time, so I think I won with that one. But my real good tonight is Shohei Ohtani. So fun to watch. You know, we always say this. We talked about him a lot last year. But, you know, he's just someone, even in the World Baseball Classic, he's not playing for the USA. So what? He just draws you in and you want to watch. Even when he does, you know, if he grounds out, he does it with panache, right? Answer this question. At what point, or are we there, is he in the discussion when you give his broad set of skills, pitching, base running, hitting, power, where is he all-time baseball player?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I'd be hard pressed to think of a more talented baseball player in the history of the sport. I'm sure there've been some other people like that, but when you can hit 450-foot home runs, you're one of the fastest players in the league. You throw 102 miles an hour from the mound. Yeah, there are very few names in that conversation, along with Ohtani.
I agree. I think he's got to be top 3, if not number 1.
I was gonna say, I think out of all the years I watched baseball, I've never seen somebody who can pitch and hit with power. And I mean, he's doing both. And to me, he's one of the greatest players I've ever seen in my life. In any sport. I don't care what sport it is. It doesn't. This whole thing, well, football or hockey, whatever you're loyal to, you're just gonna say, well, they're more physical. Yeah, I get it. But this guy's he's coming at you with the ball that as soon as it leaves your hand, it's like a golf ball. You don't know where it's going because it's going to come out there so fast. And then he can hit a 400-foot bomb the next inning. That's impressive. I'm sorry. And to sit there and try to go, well, to do the comparisons from the past. I mean, if he played in the past, people actually wouldn't be able to play in the past. So never mind. What am I talking about? Never mind. My point is, he is one of the best. He is the best player I've ever seen. Period. There's no comparison, because it's just to be able to have that kind of war at a pitcher level and a hitter level is unheard of. And try to tell me, take the Pepsi challenge on that.
Man, I think talent wise, he's probably up there, but I think you have to take into account like his body of work. He's only been in the league for a handful of years. I think when we look back at these players, we compare these numbers, how many home runs they've hit, how many strikeouts or innings pitched they have. I think. Do you think he has to have those big numbers? I don't know who Micah Owings is.
Just keep going, John, please.
Sorry, I got distracted. But no, like, do you think he needs to have these like 500, 600 home runs like all these all-time greats do for him to be there? Or, do you think – because he's probably not going to have as long as career as guys like Babe Ruth or A-Rod or guys like that who would put up some pretty big numbers.
But here's the thing. Babe Ruth never did this body of work. And in terms of like, you can't to me, it's not, you can't compare the two. You can't. You can't compare the two eras at all. What Ohtani's doing is on a pitching level and a hitting level, like just elite stuff. No one's ever done this before. Nobody. There's nobody. We've never seen anybody like this. I've never seen Babe Ruth play, so I don't care. I don't care, because it was like, oh, you gotta be pierced about baseball. I love baseball enough to respect the past. I do respect the past, but if you're gonna look at just box scores, yes, Babe Ruth has the better numbers, but he could never. Did he throw over 100 miles an hour? No. Could he hit? Yeah. So Babe Ruth could hit, but the comparison to Babe Ruth, I knock it off, because they're two different types of players, anyways.
Well, it's so hard. I mean, there's the dead ball era, there's the integration.
Yeah,
so many factors to compare back and forth. But just by dead talent, Ohtani's the guy. There's no question in my mind about it. And plus, we don't even get to see him play the field. I think he's probably a pretty decent outfielder, and it would be really a blast to see him gun down some people from right field. But we don't get to see that, and that's okay. Yeah. But I bet he could do it.
To me,
my bad. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, he's basically like Bo Jackson's tools with more baseball skill, and also Jacob deGrom as a pitcher, like in one player. It's an absurd package of skills. There's no, we have to do these kind of comparisons to come up with something close. So yeah, it's remarkable. He's a very good.
Yeah, and if I just want to add one more thing. If you say like baseball is not as physical as other sports, I would agree with you. But I also would say, like, look at all the pitchers that are getting Tommy John now, and think about the effect that has on your body. That pitching motion, it's very strenuous on your arm. And I think, sure, it's not as physical, but I think there's a reason that we're seeing so many kids nowadays and so many pitchers in the big leagues having to get that surgery because of the toll it takes throwing the ball as many times as they do at the speed at which they do it.
And he came back from a Tommy John surgery, didn't miss a beat, so he's superhuman that way too. So my bad, we can be real quick about it, because Raj just mentioned a little while ago, no pitch clock in the WBC. So noticeable now that we're watching some minor league baseball and some spring training baseball with the pitch clock. having the no pitch clock in the WBC is an issue to me. I hope they will fix that next time around. I saw some stats that Ohtani was one of the worst perpetrators. He was doing about 43, 44 seconds per pitch consistently. So that ain't going to work. And I think the more we see the pitch clock in the big leagues this year, the less we'll ever want to see non-pitch clock baseball. Ugly bullpen usage. I said something about Mark DeRosa last week about being inexperienced and having never really managed anywhere. But I will say this. He is really being hamstrung. I didn't realize the extent to which how some of these bullpen arms can be used. I mean, teams are mandating that they can't pitch back-to-back days. They're mandating that they can't come back out for a second inning. They're mandating that they have to start a clean inning. He's juggling a lot of crap there. Okay. I'm sorry. I understand it. And that goes back to the Diaz injury, I suppose. People are trying to not go there. But, man, if you're on the team, at some point you just got to pitch. You're on the team for a reason. You're there to win, I would hope. And I don't know. I think that's something's got to be fixed there because that's really going to hamstring a manager at some point in a bad way.
All right. Chris, why don't you go next?
All right. So I mentioned earlier that my good was going to be Garrett Hill because he's been throwing 97-mile-an-hour sinkers, and it's like, what is going on here? He looks like Michael Fulmer bullpen edition, but then he gave up that grand slam. So I switched it to Trey Wingenter. Trey. Yeah, you mentioned him earlier, Raj, but he's been really impressive this season. Like we knew that he had a good arm, but he hasn't really pitched in the big leagues in 3 years?
Yeah, 3 years.
Yeah, it's always dangerous to take too much stock in a small sample size in spring, but today 16 pitches, 10 strikes, 12 sliders, 4 fastballs. He got 5 swings and misses on 16 pitches. To your point, Raj, he's got 5 scoreless innings this spring, only 2 hits and 1 walk and 7 strikeouts. Fastball sitting, 95, 97, and the slider has been a consistent swing and miss pitch for him. He's been about exactly what we could hope for so far. I think I might like to see him pitch a little bit more. Like let's see him, and we may see that. We're 2 weeks away from the season. So I think we're going to start seeing some relievers pitch back-to-back in the next week or so. And I'd like to see him continue because I think that, he might not make the team, but he certainly made a case for himself so far. So, I've been impressed with him. He's been good. My bad, and we already discussed it, was all the Edwin Diaz discourse. It was super annoying. And you could throw the Jackson Jobe discourse in there if you want to. It's just people want to be angry all the time. And my ugly, and I think we may have touched on this on Sunday, was Wyatt Langford. Wyatt Langford of the Florida Gators, the outfielder, one of the top draft prospects. My preferred draft prospect, although it's hard to root against Dillon Cruz, who's hitting like 560 right now. But he's been off to an outstanding start, 16 games. He's got 7 doubles, 2 triples, 6 home runs, 14 walks to 8 strikeouts. He's also been hit by 5 pitches, and that's the key point there because that last one was a doozy. He got hit right in the junk. And to his credit, he stayed in the game, went out in the field, and then he left the game before his next plate appearance. And sure enough, he had a ruptured testicle and had to get surgery. Yeah, there's not a whole lot more to say about that, other than they say he's going to be out for a few weeks, maybe 3-4 weeks. He should make a full recovery, and let's all hope so. And also, I guess I don't know. I have to assume he wasn't wearing a cup. I don't know how many baseball players are not wearing cups these days.
What? You have to wear them.
I think a lot of baseball players do not wear cups. I think it's basically just catchers now. Yeah. I remember the dude. Was it Yordani Valdespin that Verlander hit right in the old meat puppet?
Yep. Didn't he say he hit me in the dick?
Yeah, I think that's what he said. Like that was like 8 years ago. I don't think guys were. I hated wearing a cup when I was in Little League, but
no,
I didn't wear a cup. Go ahead, Chris.
No, if you're gonna lose one of the jewels, man, maybe just wear a cup from time.
So there was a day where I was supposed. This is in Little League. I had a day off from catching, and I ended up playing the outfield. Well, our shortstop got hurt in the middle of the game, so you're playing short. I'm like, I've only played it like twice, but my coach was insistent that he wanted me to play short, and it's a gravel field. Ball skips up because I'm not wearing a cup that day. Because I didn't think about it because I always wore it as a catcher. I'm not going to ever mess with that. Got me right there. Hurt so bad, but as the guy saw me, the guy was running. This kind of a heavy set dude running. He looks, he's like, and I'm like, I still got the guy a second, and I leaned over. I got the guy out, and we couldn't turn the double play. But I sat out the rest of the game. That sucked so bad, and I never until I stopped playing baseball. There was not a day I did not wear a cup. When I played softball over here, in the rec softball, I'll wear a cup. Yeah.
I caught one on a ground ball. Like I was on second, running to third, and the ball took a bad bounce, and I tried to jump over it, but it got me right in the Johnson. But yeah, I
was umpiring, and a kid
Jed, you're a maniac. You're a maniac, Jed.
You caught without a cup?
What are you not? Oh, you're British, so you're English. So I don't understand what the English.
No.
I'm sorry. What were you saying? I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I was just going to say that I was umpiring, and this kid caught one, and he was really down for the count. He was hurting in a big way, and I'll never forget. It was just the funniest thing. His mom comes to the fence, and she tells him, "Jimmy, just rub it."
Oh.
And he yells, he's screaming at her, "Shut up, Mom! Shut up!" It was the best. It was just the funniest moment ever.
Oh man!
Like
All right. All right, John. What's your good, the bad, the ugly this week?
So my good was Spencer Torkelson, but we already kind of touched on him. He's been hitting the ball pretty hard. I think fans have kind of quieted down. You haven't really heard as much criticism as of late. I think people have been encouraged with what they've seen from him. So I was going to just go with Nick Matton, leading the Tigers in hits this spring, 10 hits. He's got 3 home runs. OPS is almost at 1,000. He's looked really, really solid this spring. So that would be my good. My bad, since we aren't going to talk White Sox, I might as well crap on the White Sox a little bit. They have struggled a bit offensively. 16 home runs is 28th in baseball in spring training. They're 29th in runs. 28th in walks drawn as well. They have played the least amount of games at 16, but still their offense hasn't been very inspiring this spring training. Oh, okay. Sorry, you distracted me. Are we watching this?
No, just keep going, John. Just
okay.
You're fine, man. Go on.
Okay. And then my ugly was the Miami Marlins, who their offense has just been dreadful this year. Their OPS as a team this spring is 615. The second worst is 661, which is the Pirates, so almost 50 points lower. They're averaging 3 runs a game, 8 home runs in 16 games, 228 batting average. And again, it's spring training, but I don't think a lot of people really have a lot of faith in the offense they have coming into this season.
Yeah, the Marlins are going to – I know they're pitcher heavy, but I felt like they didn't do enough to address the bats in the offseason. And I know they're going kind of through a change of between ownership and everything. But so Metal Bug suggested we look up Jose Canseco and Bat Boy. And I feel bad for this Bat Boy. If so, watching.
I missed it. I didn't see it.
It was about the White Sox. But no, I think to your point, the White Sox were not much better on offense than the Tigers last year. And I would be discouraged for sure if spring training is spring training, but what they've done so far, I wouldn't feel too good about it. But if we're showing videos of old nut shots, what about the first pitch that got the cameraman? That's one of my favorite videos ever.
Which one's that one?
No, you have to look up first pitch cameraman. Maybe I'll look it up and I'll
you go ahead and do that.
Yes. I know, Tom. It was a terrible first pitch and he got nailed. Yeah.
Metal Bug, thank you for that suggestion. I was trying to hold it together there, but Chris, go ahead and look that up. But so my good, there's 2 goods this week, and one is Zach Short. And the reason why I mentioned Zach Short is because he is walking a little more. He's batting 296, and he's been a lot of people have written him off as well. They're just waiting for somebody, and they're gonna they're gonna cut him anyways. And props to Zach Short. In addition to being the team's best golfer, when I was down there, they had a golf outing and he smoked. It was him and I think it was Brendan Ryan, who was I think second or third. I was kind of surprised, but I guess Ryan's a really good golfer too. And yeah, Zach Short's just going out there doing his thing. He's showing a little bit of power. He's got 8 hits. He's 8 for 27 so far this spring. So props to him. And the other part of good earlier is Palazzo, a good friend of the show, Michael Bouvier, was in here saying, "You guys are up going against the March Madness." Hey, don't get me wrong. I have over here on my screen. I have March Madness going on. I have basketball going, but due to the fact that we can't show it because we'll get sued out of oblivion, I'm not posting it. But the upsets today, Princeton. If you had Arizona going far in your bracket, guess what? It's busted. Princeton beat Arizona in a Ivy League type like score too. That's the funny part. 59-55. That sounds like an Ivy League score game, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't sound like a high scoring affair. And earlier today, Furman stunned Virginia. But here's the thing. Traditionally speaking, at least in my experience, Virginia's never been consistent in the brackets. They either the one year you don't pick them, they do really good, or they just bust your bracket pretty quickly. So March Madness is my good because it's such a cool time of year. This is when you know spring's coming. You got college basketball, the end of spring training. It's that nice transition period into April, and that's what I like about it. It's stat-wise, I mean, there's not really much to talk about, but I just that it's a feel-good thing to me. That feels good. The bad really is, and it's something that I was kind of noticing with the in terms of the injuries and just mentioning, it's really that. It's just the injuries, and it's unfortunate what's going on with that. But as far as in the positional battle lineup is concerned, you're looking at Kerry Carpenter and 291, and Akil Baddoo had a hit today. But the reason why that's kind of bad is because you also realize the Matt Verley hasn't played a lot because of injury. So that outfield, I mean, it's still kind of up in the air what's going to happen. But out of all the position battles that are left, I think that it's the reason why it's bad is because it's still murky heading into even the regular season. Because to me, you still have a clear cut. I mean, outside of Riley Green, who's had a really good spring, you come in with Austin Meadows having, okay, you're going to slide him in right, but it's a guaranteed thing. You don't really have another hitter. And I haven't seen anything that known between Carpenter and, I mean, Carpenter's having a nice spring. He's close to 300. I get it. But I'm still concerned for the outfield because I don't see somebody that's going to come out and wreck shop. And this is a team that, offensively speaking, last year, even from the outfield, didn't get any production. And they're among league lows, so league worst. So I think that just, to me, that's bad. And that's a red flag. It's something that we haven't really talked about, but again, maybe it's because of spring training stats. We shouldn't worry about it, but I'm concerned. I mean, if you look at the fact that I don't think the Tigers have a regular, like they can go, yeah, you know what, that guy's going to be at right field. It's going to be a hodgepodge. You don't know who's where except for Riley Green. Riley Green has cemented himself in center field, and that's really about it to me. So that's the reason why I thought that was bad. And my ugly, we mentioned it earlier with the WBC and everything else with that sort of nature, all that BS and involved with it too. But imagine you're the Boston Red Sox. All right. So the Boston Red Sox are going to have Garrett Whitlock, Brian Bello, and James Paxton on the IL. Paxton, no surprise there. The guy's been on the IL literally for the last on and off for 3 years. That's a second living for him too. But that really shortens a Red Sox rotation that wasn't even deep enough already. So the Red Sox rotation needs a little bit of help, but the guys have they have some minors are really kind of names like hey Brian Mata. Do you have any idea who he is? No. So
he was a good prospect.
He was a good prospect. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know who he was.
Bello, I think, was more of a prospect too, although I don't remember if he came up. But yeah, I mean, you got Chris Sale, who you hope comes back, but he's been injured a lot over the last couple of years. Some of it was freaky, but maybe that's just karma for him being who he is.
James Paxton's been on the IL since he hit puberty.
Yeah,
a long time.
I remember. I forget I almost forgot he was on Seattle Mariner, but yeah. But it's just. I mean, then yet, but still. I mean, you're relying on a lot of factors to go right with the with the Red Sox rotation with Kluber and even Sale back. It's not Chris Sale circa 3 or 4 years ago. So, but yeah, that's my good and bad and ugly this weekend. Like I said, I wanted to mention the Tigers outfield because I don't think it's talked about enough. We seem to the infield wise, I think it's set. I think we have a good idea what's going on in the infield. So first base will probably be Torque. I think at second base, you're going to see Scope. And I think Hernandez is going to make the team somehow. And they're going to just figure out who they're going to cut. Shortstop, Baez is going to be there. At third, Nick Maton. Maton has cemented himself at third base. And then I think you could – and the reason why I think you've seen Haas in the outfield too is because Jake Rogers does kind of have a number one catcher tendency to him. And they don't really have an option. They don't really have another power bat out in the outfield right now. So –
no, I mean, it would come down to Carpenter there. Like, do you want his power or do you want a little bit more of Baddoo's versatility? We'll see what they do. That's going to be, I think, one of the last decisions they make probably. Did you get to do your ugly or was that the White Sox? Was that the bad?
My Marlins were my ugly.
Oh, okay, my bad.
So I just want to go back to Zach Short. Just when you had us submit those roster guesses opening day, I got Zach Short on there, so I'm holding out hope. I think he might make everybody. He has a lot of, for some reason, there's a lot of Zach Short haters online. I think maybe he might piss them off and be there.
I think it may have something to do with like his career 140 batting average in the big leagues, but but it's always fewer than 200 plate appearances. We had this discussion in the Discord earlier today because discussing Zach Short over Ryan versus Ryan Kreidler. And neither of them are offensive superstars, right? And one thing I was talking about was Zach Short's a career 237 hitter in the minors, which is not a good sign. We've talked about it, I think, before. Is batting average isn't the be-all, end-all. It's not a great stat, but if you can't hit better than 250 or so in the minors and you're not a catcher, the odds are you're not going to be much of a hitter in the big leagues. It's just the stats say it. And meanwhile, Kreidler is like a 248 hitter in the minors, so it's like it's not a whole lot better. And Short certainly will take his walks, and he will. He theoretically has power, but so does Kreidler. So it depends on what you're looking for. If they just want like every point of on base percentage they can get, then I think Short might make the team. I think Kreidler is a better defender. He's a more natural shortstop. I think Zach Short is a second baseman pretending at shortstop. But yeah, and ultimately these are kind of you're arguing about the 25th, 26th man on the roster here.
Exactly. Yeah.
Uper, it might depend on who's a better clubhouse guy, right?
Oh, got to have those intangibles.
We got to figure that one out.
Yeah,
culture. Got to build the culture, John.
See those guys
all about the culture.
Yeah, I sometimes love these debates online about this. It's sometimes it's really good. It's a good spirited thing. Sometimes. In the case of when I posted earlier, the moment I posted about Jackson Jobe on the Tiger Minor Report Facebook page, old friend of the show, Zach Jennings, said, I'm going to avoid Twitter like the plague. That's exactly what he said. He's going to Facebook. Yeah. So, yeah, there it is. Yeah.
So I put the video up in the chat of
you did.
It's a page up there if you want to grab it, or if people.
Yeah, I'll grab it. Yeah, I'll grab it right here.
It's one of my favorites ever, and it was like some like French Canadian like ballet guy, or I don't know what it was, but yeah, boy, he was unfortunate.
I mean, it'd be a good way to end the show because I mean that like we need. Do we need that?
What today's news was.
Yeah. If exactly. If there's a way to capsulize the whole Jackson Jobe thing, I would definitely go that way with that. But no, I think okay, I remember this now. Let's end the podcast with. Was there any questions, by the way? I didn't see. If anybody has any questions in the comments, let me know in the chat. We'll do like.
No, we didn't put them out on Twitter, so I don't think we got any, or at least I didn't see us.
I meant to put that out earlier, and I didn't get a chance to, and so.
But yeah.
Without further ado.
This is
oh yeah.
Look at his face.
was beautiful.
Excuse me.
Everybody's high-fiving each other. Everybody's high-fiving each other, and no one cares about the dude. It's just like he's just like minding his own business, taking a camera, and just gets. Well, let me see if I can find the. Oh man!
Oh, beautiful.
GIF of that somewhere. Yeah, so it was more in the middle, I think.
Yeah, here it is. It's just I want to watch in slow motion because. We're children. We're children at the end of the day, folks. Oh man, people, yeah. Okay, so we do have a question about the rotation. Okay, we'll do answer that. All right, I can stop. All right, compose ourselves. We're professionals.
All right.
So Harrison asked what the rotation would look like. I think, it was something that somebody brought up earlier. I started thinking about this, and look, I think that the rotation is going to be this. I think it's going to be Matthew Boyd, Spencer Turnbull, Michael Lorenz. What am I missing? And Raul Rodriguez and Bo Brisky. No. I think Joey Wentz. I think Joey Wentz or Bo Brisky. I think Matt Manning gets some time in Toledo.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
I think mine would be just flip out Brisky for Manning. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to see Matt Manning starting in Toledo. I don't know. I think Brisky could probably start in the bullpen, but I don't think they give up on Manning this early.
Yeah, I'll go with John. I think Manning probably does make it, but there's nothing wrong if he goes to AAA. I mean, worked for Max Scherzer once upon a time.
Yeah, I mean it's depends on how much they're weighing spring performance versus last year's performance, I guess, because I think Joey Wentz has been the better pitcher this spring. We also have heard that Matt Manning was slowly ramping up, so I don't know if that's part of the plan.
Yeah,
I think he better start pitching better soon. But yeah, I mean it's hard for me to pencil anybody. I guess that's my 5 in pencil is with the other two guys is what we've basically been expecting. But if Manning does continue to scuffle and Wentz continues to pitch the way he has, I could absolutely see him winning the job because at a certain point you have to reward guys for performing, right? Or else what's the point?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I just don't see if Manning's struggling, why? Yeah. Anyway, as far as there was a question there about Devin to the IL and Ibanez, I think the injury update earlier had him. I think they were not due to come back for another. I'm not sure what's going on with Ibanez, but I know Devin, I think, is still out for another week or two.
And Nevins was an oblique, right? Like that. It's like a month-long injury, I think. And Ibanez was what? His hamstring? I don't remember what it was.
And the rotation, and Samuel brings up a good point. I like what he said about Matthew Boyd and some of the solid numbers were small sample size. Again, I've mentioned this last week, and I will continue to say so. The Tigers' rotation is something to consider as a weakness because none of these guys have pitched above 100 innings, and it's going to be a slow ramp up. And you're going on a brutal schedule. You're asking this rotation to carry you in a month where you're playing a lot of teams that were like postseason bound or potentially in this year. And I think that is a concern. And Matthew Boyd has looked good in spring. But again, spring's a little different when you get up there. So that's where I feel like until I see, if I saw 5 straight starts of this, then I'd be like, well, okay, well, new Matthew Boyd, thank you. We like that, but we'll see what happens. As far as relievers hitting 100 miles per hour, I think there's been, I want to say that the gentleman we spoke about earlier, right, Chris?
Yeah, Anuris Zabala hit 100. We've seen Elvis Alvarado hit 100 before. He didn't this spring. I'm not sure if either of those guys will actually pitch for the Tigers at all this year. So I can't think. Maybe Wingenter, really lets loose one time and gets up to 99 or 100 if he makes the team. But I can't think of anybody else who's really going to even flirt with triple digits. I mean, Lang will hit 97, 98. Foley's hit 100 in the past, but he's more of like a 96, 97 guy now. who else is out there? Yeah, I'm trying to think. Like, I don't think Carvin Castro throws much harder than like 96.
Diaz.
Yeah, Diaz is a mid-90s guy with a good changeup. So, yeah, I can't think of anybody who's going to actually, consistently hit triple digits like Gregory Soto did a lot. But, whatever.
Yeah, there's. I think that the Tigers do have a couple guys that are getting close there. As far as the Reese Olson update is concerned, he still hasn't thrown as of yet. So nothing's changed on that front. But you're talking about what? Apparently my dog's been the producer tonight. My dog has been sitting next to me on the camera side of things. So I'm going to present her here. You want attention? Is that what it is? You want attention? Come here.
We're on the camera.
She wants attention. Sorry, I got distracted there for a moment. But the one number, there was a guy that was yesterday for, I think it was, I want to say, was it Neris still throwing for the Dominican Republic? Do you guys see some of his?
Yeah. There was, in Camilo Duvall.
Duvall it was.
Duvall, yeah.
I mean, there were like 30 pitches that were over 100 miles per hour in that game from like 4 different guys. It was absurd. There's some big arms out there these days.
Yeah, look at this. I mean, it's ridiculous. 101, 101, just right there. And I was surprised he didn't get any swings and misses, but a lot of them were just slightly off. So,
yeah.
But no, at any rate, yeah, I think that was actually there's a new schedule lead to entire Central finishing under 500. Yes. The AL Central is going to be bad this year. So.
Do you remember, what was it, like 2 years ago when the Tigers were unexpectedly good? They had like an above 500 record against every good team they played except the AL Central when they got demolished by by the Cleveland and Minnesota and stuff. Like, I don't know. Never underestimate the ability of Major League Baseball teams to play down to their competition.
Exactly.
It wouldn't shock me at all if the Tigers are 500 or better against like the AL East this year. It's kind of random, right?
Or somehow they'll go out west, and they have always struggled in Oakland or California every time they play Anaheim.
Yeah, basically
Los
the whole West
Angeles.
Coast.
Yeah, they have always struggled for whatever reason. I think the Tigers I think all the teams traveling the least amount or something like that, dude. Remember that map we were looking at? There was some way the Tigers managed to beat.
Yeah, it was like they have the biggest reduction in miles traveled from last year to this year or something like that. Yeah, it's like it didn't make a whole lot of sense, but cool.
Yeah, I'll take that every week.
Chris Illich on that gas money.
Yeah. So on that note, thank you so much for listening to Woodward Tigers. Again, tonight, I know it was I'll admit it, I'm a little scattered, but I've been up since like 4:30, 5 o'clock this morning. I've just been, again, I should have just done the show earlier like we did. Then I would be a little more fresher. But again, thanks so much for everybody listening. We appreciate the impromptu-ness of everybody coming in on Ray McConnell, who's been a long-time listener. Thanks, man. It's good to see you on the chat. Everybody on the chat, really appreciate it. And, of course, go to woodwardsports.com. Check out all the great content over there. And also, Tiger Man, look, here, okay. Listen up, people. Spread the word. We are at 910 on Tiger Mountain Report. We're just 90 subscribers away from hitting 1,000. Do me a favor. Anybody you know, your grandmother, your uncle, that dude at the office that just farts and walks away and crop dusts you, whatever, whoever it is, whoever's listening out there,
crop dust, yes,
the crop dust guy or whatever.
Yeah.
Please tell them to subscribe to the channel. If we get to 1,000, that means we actually can make money. Okay? Mm-hmm. And then I can pay people like John to do things. I can pay Uper. I can get Uper new equipment.
Yeah. Well, and
wow.
I think it was Jeremy was asking if we're, going to try to get more minor league interviews. I think absolutely, definitely during the course of the season, and we're working on some others behind the scenes. But
Jackson Jobe has some time on his hands.
Yeah. Well, we interviewed him last year from after. We got some video from Brian Pena's office, but yeah, we want to do that, and the greater impact we have, the larger footprint on YouTube, the more likely that sort of thing is going to happen. So, yeah. Yeah. I assume everybody in here already does follow us because they're, listening to us talk about baseball on a Thursday night at 11 p.m.
Yeah, Samuel McLean just subscribed. So,
all right, Sam, you're the man. So if anybody who's not subscribed to us, please do. And yeah, Birdball, everybody, thank you so much, because the moment we do, and then like I said, then I can do giveaways, like give you guys shirts and all that stuff, because when I have a little extra money, I throw it around. I'm throwing away shirt giveaways. And then we did giveaways last year for Woodward Tigers too, so we'll do them again, or we'll do them through the Tiger Mind Report. It all depends on what's going on. But again, it's just a way. Like, people ask, like, why do you guys do this? Oh, you expect to get paid? Well, there's people out there who put Patreons and they get money like that when they need new gear. So I don't understand why asking for a few bucks to go get gas and all that stuff. And yes, we're going to be, there's more. I did a clip tonight about Jackson Jobe, so we're going to be more now that I have free time. I'm just now writing for Woodward Tigers. I'm no longer the web editor. I'm taking a step back and just focusing on baseball content. So now that I have a little more free time, that'll allow me to do things like I did earlier. So again, thank you so much for listening. We appreciate it. And that's right. Jeremy was one of the first ones that won a shirt. So yeah, like I said, the more we have, the better. And if you're swinging A like John, we can get him some better gear. And
what? So, what did you say?
He's got a swinging A shirt on.
He's got a swinging A shirt on. So Samuel,
okay.
Let's do this. Samuel, thanks so much for the compliment. We appreciate it. And we look forward to talking to you on Sunday. We'll be doing the Sunday show, as the Tigers will be in the home stretch of spring training, and they will be before the season opener on March 30th against the Rays. So until Sunday, have a good weekend, everybody.